we're going to draw our webinar to a close. But I would like to, as we do this, to give an opportunity to our panelists in-house to make their closing comments, and in the process also touch on the issues of resources. When Engineer Faith was talking about the protection systems, the need for ring connections and all that, it all requires resources. So how will we be able to mobilize resources? And then within that framework also we have the issue of regulations. I think it's good to understand that the energy sector works in a regulated environment. So what could be the regulation gaps that we need to fill so that we can be able to achieve the resilience that we require for our energy generation, distribution and transmission infrastructure. And probably you can probe in the issues around collaborations. I know we have things like the power pools and how that will play about, and it will also have to do with the issues of capacity. Engineer Opere from EBK has extensively discussed the issues of capacity, but you can still be able to make comments for us. So closing remarks, resources, regulations, collaborations, and capacity, if we may. We'll start with Engineer Kimeo.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think yes, quite still a number of issues to be discussed on this topic. But I think generally I would say that the beginning of this discussion, of beginning of this webinar, I think is a good start just to have a conversation of the issues around it. Then of course now we can map out some of the things which need to be done under the various sections. Policy will be very critical in this to just regulate the industry. I think it will be a good point, because then as a person who wants to put up a power plant or wants to build an energy infrastructure of any kind, there can be a guideline or policy guideline on the minimums you need to take care of, and then of course take them through a body, a regulatory body, then to approve, check whether it's compliant with that, so that then in the event that we have people who would want to take shortcuts, that if they are guided on that particular case. The academy is also going to create a very important role. We cannot explain that. Looking at a few years ago, renewable energy was not much talked about in the colleges, the universities, but now we have courses to that end. So then what can we do in terms of curriculum development, in terms of enriching our curriculum, just to mainstream this discussion across all the issues. So I think allow me just to touch on those few to give space to the others. And just as a closing remark, thank you very much for the opportunity to have this discussion. Let's keep the discussion going, and I'm sure we shall leave this country in a better place. Thank you very much.
Thank you. In a few sentences, I'll touch on what needs to be done. And I want to say we are capable to have a reliable, resilient network, and we need to do a lot in line with redundancy, flexibility, and multifunction operations of equipment, either as protection or even the consumers. We need to have our systems be very adaptive. Currently, I know we have very fixed protection schemes, but I know we should be going towards adaptive protection schemes that can change with the changing dynamics of the network and even the environmental conditions. And we will be able to harness this power by utilizing data in real time, and especially building data will take time, but currently we have enough data that we could start with as we keep building it to the direction we want to go. And because I once mentioned about smart grids, I'll still say that we need to make our network and our grid very smart and make it as very flexible as it ought to be. We have other countries that have managed to make the grid very flexible. We need to manage our voltage and our frequency right from generation all the way to even the appliances that we have. So even when people are importing things from other countries and bringing them to Kenya, we want to know what this kind of equipment effects they have to the grid. And I want to say about partnerships. We have ability to work with academia. The other time I spoke to Moi University about the interlinks between academia and the industry, and I believe it was so critical for the students in 5th year to appreciate that they not just do projects, they do projects that can match with the needs in the industry so that they don't have a gap, and that way we're able to make the situation better with time. The industry also is supposed to work together instead of being siloized, so that we don't have the industry bring its own things that relate to them alone, but we should have this common forums where we have the industries from various high voltage and low voltages, and all these people coming together to discuss the implication of their actions versus what the grid is giving to them. We also need to have policymakers being able to co-opt the industry users. I know most people don't know when these discussions are taking place, so they just find kitu ilishapitishwa because they do not get the information. We need to have international bodies also allowing Kenya to participate in the standards that are developed. These standards are not just developed to affect that country, but there is a way we interrelate as international and as countries. So we need to be very proactive. My baseline would be proactivity from the engineering perspective, from the users, from the manufacturers, everybody to be very proactive. And also to bring financiers who are futuristic. You know, financiers can come in to just support a project that is so short-lived and not go so far in developing the country. So you need to have very firm decision makers. When they allow financiers to come on board, we'll be able to see the future and also see how the implication of the finances will pay back instead of just taking money and it cannot even pay back. Engineers need to be very deliberate in their small daily actions. The small actions we do daily will eventually cumulatively have a bigger impact. So every morning we wake up and every evening we come back to the house and say, what have I done today to make my climate impact and make it a better place? I was learning the other day when I was speaking to the University of Eldoret about the world we are living in today was made by other people, but we are able to create a world we ourselves shall be proud of in the future. So I would want to participate in making that world, and I want to welcome all of us to think on the actions that we want to see our world to look like. The prototype we are having right now was a masterpiece of some people in the 1960s and 50s. How about our future? Are we going to create a masterpiece that we can look back and say, I'm proud to be associated with that? So we have to be very deliberate in making the redundancy part of our designs. N-1 criterion should be anything and everything that you do when you design. And that way, as engineer mentioned, we should be going toward predictive instead of maintaining when the issue as can be already predicted. So that when we do maintenance as Kenya Power or Ketraco, or even as we in the industry, we are doing predictive maintenance, not the one it was already happening and you're just firefighting. At the end of the day, yes, it's corrective maintenance. You should be doing more of predictive maintenance. And I want to encourage all of us to join politics where you can. Those decisions are made by politicians who don't know what they're saying, but we who understand should be in those policies making in the parliament. If you know of any body or committee being set up, please let us know that we may send relevant people who can go and speak on our behalf and also help in setting these policies, because some of these policies are just passed, vote, but the impact is so long-term to the rest of us. And the organizations that are also making standards, ISO standards, international and local, KEBS, IEEE, EPRA, has also many committees that do standards and the rest of these things. So I want to encourage all of us to take part. As you hear these opportunities, don't let them go. Even the ladies, by the way. I'm the only lady in this panel. I want to ask the ladies not to be afraid to take responsibilities. Your voice is needed.
Thank you, Engineer Faith. I think you've summarized most of the things I had, but I want to delve on the issue of policy. We have a structure in this sector, the energy sector, where the policy maker is the MOE, and the regulator to ensure that they enforce those policies is EPRA. we lost an opportunity of having an IPRA person here because they are the people who ensure that the policy is adhered to, and as such, avert most of the issue. It is a reality that as we expand our energy infrastructure, we have also seen an equally increased number of incidences caused by two things: the climate change that we have talked about today at length, and also the increasing interactions of the infrastructure with the human beings. So there is a policy, but what we need to ask ourselves in this city today, is that policy sufficient to take care of the climate change? That should be the question. And that is where we as engineers, we as academia should come in and voice our proposal. I want to pick from Faith where they say, if we don't involve ourselves in policy making level, we may end up being blamed for most of the system failures, not because we didn't do something, but we continued doing something that was not adapting to the environment. So I would like to say, as even the Energy Act comes in, there is a lot of strict measures to ensure that licensees conform to the policy. But my big question today as we leave here, is the policy sufficient to take care of climate change? That should be the discussion. And I would like to say that the future looks better. The future looks brighter. In the energy sector, they have been able to open up to the academia in terms of regulations. I've seen most of the time they reach out. My request is that when they reach out, professors, experts, environmentalists, there is a group that was sitting here today, and I think they deal with safety issues. Please invite yourself, if you're not invited, to the table and bring your input. With such, what is happening today in this room, if the deliberations are extended, they are moved to the right table, I think we shall be able to adapt to the environment in the coming years. The issues of AI, I think somebody said, and I want to say that we had a discussion with a vendor who had a proof of concept to use intelligence, artificial intelligence, but all those will require to be incorporated in the policy. Otherwise, I invite each and every one of us to voice their input, because every one of us has an input on what we can do on the policy. And that way we can move this country to a better position in providing sufficient and reliable energy to all Kenyans, no matter what the climate brings to us. Thank you very much, and I think I close my remarks there.
Thank you, panelists, for making time to be able to share your knowledge on this webinar. As we close, I would like to give it to our host to wrap it up for us. But as we were talking about the issues, regulation, resources, it reminded me of a story I would like to share. On Monday, I took an Uber from town back to the office in Kara. And you know, when you meet strangers at times, you get to discuss things. And most of the time, you realize when you discuss things with strangers, you discuss only very important things. So, of course, this time, one of the things that you will discuss, obviously, will be the economy. I don't think that is easy to pass. And it goes along very closely with the taxes. But the third item that he brought up was about a competitor for Kenya Power. So that means in the order of important issues for the gentleman that was driving me to the office on Monday was economy, taxes and then energy. And so he was very excited that there will be a competitor and the cost of power will come down. But I asked him if he is able to get a different price for petrol from Shell and Oil Libya. Then he paused and I told him the same institution that gives the tariff for petroleum is the same institution that gives tariffs for electricity. And so if another operator comes in to retail and distribute, they will be bound by the same tariff. Then that took him aback. But that is to put into perspective the issue of regulation, and that the energy sector is regulated not out of will, but out of necessity. Because when we talk about all this infrastructure that we want to put up, it's a cost. So I also told him that for your information, that opportunity has been available for another player to come in and compete in the power from as early as 2006. The Energy Act of 2006 allowed for independent distributors. But the catch is, if you come in and you have to put up infrastructure, you cannot overlay infrastructure over another infrastructure. So you cannot come and put a distribution line along the road here and start selling power. You have to go and lay infrastructure in a different place where there isn't. Exactly. So I don't know if I really disappointed him or if I helped him, but that is the nature of the energy sector. The infrastructure is very expensive, so as a way of regulation, even when we allow competition, we cannot allow that to come and lay another distribution line besides another one. The one that is available, either is shared, even with the competitors, or if you want to lay another one, then you have to lay it in a different place. And that is just the regulation. And the importance is because it's a cost that must end up in the tariff. It's a cost that must end up in the tariff. So even as we discuss this resilience, most of the costs we have in car somehow will have to end up in the tariff. There are ways to balance that. One is for the economy to grow, and we have a higher demand for power and spread that cost much better. So that we can be able to do that. But the other way to look at it is, if we think power is expensive, we've talked about the issue of blackouts. And when we have a blackout for a very short period of time, the impact that it has to the economy and even our social life is so much that we have that big outcry. So what will happen if, say, we were not to have power, say, for a day or 2 days or a week? So it's expensive, but we need to invest in that so that we can be able to have a resilient economy, to have safeguards for social life, and be able to prosper in the things that we do. So thank you very much, and over to our host.
Okay, thank you very much. Allow me first to appreciate all our participants who are here with us and those who joined in from wherever they are. And also I would like to appreciate our panelists for the very informative discussions. I think we've gained very good insights into the energy sector, especially in terms of issues of safety, resilience, and energy security in general. From the discussion, I think there's a general consensus that the approach to the solution to this problem will require all stakeholders. It's a multi-faceted approach. We've mentioned about policy, we've mentioned about research and innovation, that means data. We've mentioned about financing, we talked about partnerships. And I think it even extends beyond that. And that means that we still have to advance this debate so that we can be able to arrive at a collective approach or solution to be able to tackle this challenge which is with us. And I think going forward, I would say that we are still going to have a series of these webinars. I think this just was our first kind of engagement to be able to set a base, and then I think in our next kind of discussions, it's unfortunate we didn't have EPA. The EPA representative was not able to join us in the last minute, I think because of some other engagements. But I'm hoping that in our next webinar we should be able to have representation from EPA, because policy seems to be a very, very key aspect here. Like you heard from one of our panelists, that if we open up the sector, let's say for energy generation and transmission, then you also need to have your own transmission lines. Maybe you have your own waves. And that's an issue of policy, which means if we are able to make the policy terrain favorable or somehow promote liberalization in the sector, in a way we are also building resilience, because if we have options, then that means we are able to be resilient to some of these shocks that arise, especially in terms of energy disruptions. And I'm happy from what I've heard our panelists say that our current infrastructure is able to some extent respond to some of these shocks. I think we need to go further and see how can we make it even to be able to respond real time, to be able to be smart, and even give us early warnings that this is going to happen. And that requires that we have to do some research, some data collection, some analysis, so as we are able to inform those decisions. So otherwise, thank you very much, and I think that brings us to the end of our webinar. I don't know whether the chief guest, the chief panelist, has anything else to say. Otherwise, we want to close the webinar and wish everyone a very good